What's up guys, I'm Nathanis, and in this video I'm going to talk about my top 10 tips for playing on Nightmare difficulty in Dragon Age Inquisition. Let's get started. Tip number 1. Make effective, planned out skill builds. If you don't follow a skill build, you simply won't have enough damage, survivability, and crowd control to play on Nightmare. Making a build isn't really that difficult. Think of what role you want your given party member to play, and choose skills that support that role and work well with each other. For example, if you want to build a tank, choose skills that generate guard, increase your survivability, and allow you to maintain aggro. For this role, most of the skills in the Vanguard and Champion trees are a good choice. Tip number 2. Proper party setup. The safest choice is usually 1 tank, 2 DPS, and 1 support. You don't have to follow this exact setup, and there are other viable choices, but generally speaking, you want to have at least a tank and a support. I also like to choose ranged DPS over melee DPS because they tend to take a lot less damage. As for my own party setup, I usually have Blackwell as the tank, my Inquisitor and Dorian as the ranged DPS, and Solus as the support. Tip number 3. Optimal tactics and behaviors. These two things can be optimized quite a bit. For example, you can set your stamina and mana reserve quite high, so that you have enough mana to use important abilities manually, like Revival. You can also improve the targeting behavior. What I like to do is set the target for all of my DPS to Blackwell, since he is the tank. In terms of tactics, you want to set all of the really important abilities to preferred. For example, for Blackwell, I have all of the taunt abilities set to preferred, so that he's going to be casting them frequently to keep aggro off of other party members. Meanwhile, you want to completely disable powerful skills with long cooldown times, like Mark of the Rift, so that you can cast them manually. Finally, you can also disable those skills that you don't find useful. Tip number 4. Crafting. Crafting is very useful in Inquisition. For example, here's an armor piece that I used to wear compared to one that I recently crafted. You can see the massive upgrade in pretty much every stat. I would suggest that you only craft armor pieces, because you will get a lot of unique weapon drops as you play through the game, whereas good armor drops are much more rare. Tip number 5. Micromanagement. Although the game's AI is relatively effective, especially when you optimize it, you will still need to micromanage your party during combat from time to time. The two most important things to micromanage are position and focus skills. For example, you never want to have your mages stand in melee range and take unnecessary damage. Similarly, you want to pause to make the most of your focus abilities, like Mark of the Rift. Tip number 6. War Table Missions. War Table Missions are not just a tool to unlock new areas and progress through the storyline. They're also a great way to constantly boost your resources at essentially no cost. There are all sorts of missions that provide you with things like crafting materials, items, and influence. Try to visit Skyhold every once in a while and assign your 3 advisors, Josephine, Colin, and Liliana, to new missions. Tip number 7. Check merchants for useful things. You may just find something amazing. For example, you can find stuff like unique weapons, potion recipes, and item schematics. I actually got my current unique bow off a merchant, and I've been using that for 5 levels. Tip number 8. Potions. You should always try to resupply your potions at Inquisition camps when you're out in the field. You should also try to pick up the 4 extra potions perk, which can be found under the Forces tab in your perks, and that will raise your maximum health potion amount from 8 to 12. Also, don't forget to make use of other potions like Jar of Bees, which can be very useful in combat. Lastly, try to upgrade your potions whenever you have the required materials. Tip number 9. Combos. Combos are extra effects that activate only when you use 2 specific skills one after another. Combos are very useful in combat as they allow you to deal with very high damage along with some additional effect. Read your skills to see which ones can activate a combo. All combos require some sort of a CC effect, like the freeze from Winter's Grasp, so make sure you have at least a couple of CC abilities. Here's an example of a Winter's Grasp long shot combo. As you can see, I deal extra cold damage after shattering the Winter's Grasp freeze. Tip number 10. Crowd Control. Also known as CC, crowd control refers to abilities that reduce the number of enemies that you have to fight at one time. CC is very helpful on Nightmare difficulty because monsters have high health and damage. Try to have at least a couple of CC abilities, typically from one of your mages, and use them to crowd control as many targets as you can. So, those are my top 10 tips for playing on Nightmare difficulty. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.